this is one story. It's very close to my heart. In my first area, there was a drought in Freetown, and there's a main water line there's a reservoir that would provide the main water for Freetown that would run through the tap, and somehow it had gotten broken, and so there was no main water line, and there had been no rain for a long time. So there was a drought. In our apartment, we have these big 5-gallon drums we would store water in, and we'd been using it for a while, and the water was, very low, so a total of a few gallons in the whole apartment. And usually if it gets low, we'd call the mission office and they'd send someone out with water, but since the main water line was down, there was no water. And I just remember waking up and getting ready, and we'd been sweaty from the day before. We had done a service project, just covered in sweat and dirt and grime, and had my mission clothes on. I was pretty young, new in the mission. I thought, man, I can't do this. This is so hard. I can barely study and focus, being so dirty, and we're just saving our water just to drink because there's so little water left. And I was a little scared. And I was reading my scriptures for personal study, and the Spirit just hit me and said, why haven't you prayed for water? And I grabbed my companion and said, companion, we need to pray for water. So we knelt down together and we prayed. And then he showed me a lesson in faith. Right after we prayed, his name's Elder Agama from Ghana, he went outside and lined the floor with these buckets that would, the ceiling would catch the water and run off and drip into the buckets. And there's not a sight of rain in the area, but he just lined the rain buckets out, waiting for water. So we went back to our studies, and I kid you not more than 5 minutes later, I heard the thunder, and the rain just started pouring down, and it filled all of our buckets. And right as it filled up, the tap came back on, and there was water, more than enough water. It was overflowing from our buckets, and it just let me know that Heavenly Father was watching over us. He knew what we were doing. He knew what we needed, and we just had to ask Him. So I'm really grateful for that experience.
I can share like a spiritual experience that really helped me realize how much Heavenly Father wanted me to go on a mission. If I start getting emotional, I get emotional about my mission. My twin brother and I, like a lot of our family members aren't LDS, and a lot of them were kind of shocked when I said I was going on a mission. And me and him, besides my dad, were the first two to go on missions within like 30 years. So like it was kind of a big deal. Like, and we promised each other we wouldn't quit at all, because we don't believe in quitting. And during the first week, he was struggling. I didn't see him. We went from seeing each other like every day of our lives to absolutely, because we're best friends. We've done everything together, whole entire lives. Played sports, be with same friends, same everything. So all of a sudden, I didn't see him for like 2 days straight, and like that was hard because time in the MT seems like a lifetime sometimes those first couple of days. And I see him, and he comes up to me, and he was just bawling, and like he was down. He was really down, and he was crying. He had red bloodshot eyes. He was getting bloody noses. He says he couldn't handle it, and he says he wanted to go home, and that hurt me because we're best friends. We were in it together, and I was like, no, you can't. And I was just loving my time, but seeing him down got me down, and there's a lot of support for him. But I've never prayed so hard in my life. And I was praying to Him, Father, I was like, please help. Like all the words like I was trying to say them just weren't working. And I was praying, I was like, God, please bless the miracle happen. And this is like, I was learning how to pray because of this trial, I guess you would say. And it got me considering, like, if he goes home, I might go home. And so like it was the first couple of days, and he was like, I'm going home. Like, we're just like, just keep trying, just give it a couple more days. And he's like, so he gave it a couple more days, still got it was just getting worse and worse. And I started getting bad. And I just kept praying, and had a massive miracle. My mom knew about it, and these two gentlemen in my ward, they felt inspired that they needed to come down to the MTC and see my brother because they heard about it. They heard he was struggling, and I was struggling. And I just kept praying. I had no idea that this was going to happen. But he says, I'm calling home. I saw him, and he called. He's like, I'm calling home. I'm going home in 5 minutes. He's like, I'm leaving. And these two guys, I had no idea. I was walking. It was up near the front desk, near the MTC. And they walked through the front doors. And I started crying. And I ran into their arms and gave them a hug. And I was just so excited. So excited. I couldn't realize, I didn't realize at the time that how perfect of timing it was. And I was like, thank goodness you guys are here. And I just hugged them. They're like, you guys okay? And they said they felt inspired. They needed to come down here. And they talked to us. And at the same time, and and they just got me pumped up, just talked to us, gave us advice, just, there's an answer to the prayer I was praying for, and it was so nice. Preston, my twin brother, ended up staying, and then from there on, things just, that really made me realize how much my Father wanted me to stay on a mission, for these two men to feel inspired to come down and help us. And later on, they became the first and second counselors of the bishopric. And that really helped me realize that Heavenly Father really directs us. And so that was just the turning point of my mission. After that, or the beginning point, after that, I realized that Heavenly Father really loved me more than I knew. And my twin brother, that he really wanted me to go on a mission, that he wants all of us to go on missions, and he'll do everything he can if we just ask, and we ask for help. And obviously I wasn't the only one praying. My whole ward got together and prayed for my brother, and he ended up staying and serving a wonderful mission. And just, that was the beginning. I learned how to pray during that experience, and that continued throughout the rest of my mission, and was the greatest blessing. And in the MTC in general, just trying to be friends with all the missionaries, putting yourself out there, not being shy. A lot of people are shy, but just not being shy, being friends with everyone, getting to know your teachers. I'm best friends with all the missionaries I serve with now because they inspired me. My teachers, I see my MTC teachers, and that was 4 years ago, and he's my hero because I took the time. I wanted to get to know him. He became my hero. And that's something I find really interesting too, is just appreciating the MTC, the time in there, and just thrust yourself in the scriptures. That's what I loved. Every day, I just looked forward to personal study. I just looked forward to it. Language study, Chinese was pretty difficult, but I still liked it. I got kind of sick a couple times in the MTC, or just throughout my mission. But loving my companion, that was cool. That was cool too, because we played. It was funny because there's people in my district who I played high school soccer against, and there's kind of bitter feelings there. But it was still cool. It was fun. We all related a lot. We also had a lot of different things about us, and my weaknesses were his strengths, and my strengths were his weaknesses, and it was just really cool. And so that's a big thing too, is just trying to be really understanding is what helped me a lot too, because I had a twin, so naturally it was easy for me to get along with people. With having a companion, I was used to it, and so while a lot of companionship struggled, for me it was just natural. And just right away, you might get a little jealous because your companion might be better than you at something, but that's where you just gotta realize you gotta learn from them and be accepting and realize you have your own strengths. And learning, it started for me, is learning not to compare. Because you compare yourself to missionaries, so you compare yourself to other missionaries your whole entire mission, and learning not to will be the greatest benefit. So that was just kind of my MTC experience, and now my best friends are the people I was in the same district with me, and so they're great, they're wonderful. So that's how I see the MTC, is just one big spiritual, just like place to get. It's just filled me up for the field. So it's great.
So my favorite story, and this has to do with my hero. He's one of my heroes. I was in my first area, and at this point I was training. And there was a problem of drugs in that area and there was just a huge concentration of teenagers / adults that would do drugs. And there was one guy in particular, his name was Christian, that would pride himself in yelling at us, and he was the drug lord of that area. And he tried to make a point that he was in charge, and he would yell at us and swear at us and stuff, and we would just laugh. He was a fun guy, and we would just laugh, and it kind of made him want to come on more, because he thought, oh, it's not affecting him, so I'll just step up my game. And so if it was so bad that, like I said, it was 30 streets big, so we always were walking past his house, and it was so bad that when he wasn't outside, we would pass and someone would go get him, and he would come after us, and we would be like, oh boy, here he comes again. And we had never really talked to him though, but we would talk to his friends, and he was like I said, the leader of them all. And there was one day that me and my companion were teaching some of his friends on the side of the street, and he, it was amazing because we were teaching these kids, and like I said, in Mexico City, there's hundreds of people. So when a small group accumulates, it can immediately get just massive amounts of people. So we were teaching these two kids, and we're sitting down, and people would come and kind of linger. And so instantly this became a multitude, and it was awesome for me and my companion. We felt like Jesus Christ and his apostles, as if it was a Sermon on the Mount. We were pumped because we were teaching the plan of salvation, and people would come, and we would notice, and they'd come out, and they would leave, or some people would linger and really get an interested look on them. And it's hard to kind of personalize it to 50 people or more, so we would kind of just talk, and we'd just trade turns. We would ask questions, but kind of just more talk, and let people all have a chance to hear about our message. And I remember as we were talking, this guy, Christian, came up. And I remember kind of like grabbing my companion's leg and thinking, like looking at him and saying, are you seeing this? He's here. Christian's here. And he's going to ruin this lesson. And my companion, he was new. Like I said, he was a trainee. So he froze up like, oh no. And he kind of stopped in the middle of his sentence and passed the time over to me. And so I was like, all right, I got to set the example. And so I continued with why we were here on this earth. And I noticed he didn't have a look of disgust on him. He had a look of interest. And I kind of thought it was a dare for him to come over. I was like, oh, someone dared him to come over. But he stayed with that look. And we got to the point where we talked about this life, the life after this life, or the spirit world. And we told everyone that we know where we're going. And we testified. And I remember, I'll never forget the look on his face. And he raised his hand and he said, whoa. And he knew we were elders. So he says, elders, you mean to tell me that you know where we're going after this life? And I thought he was like going to just shove it back in our face and just say something weird or mean or something. And my companion, I kind of looked at him like, you want to answer? And he was like, no. So I was like, all right, I'll take it. And I said, yeah, we do know where we're going. And I tried to say with as much confidence to show him, you can't faze us, man. We're missionaries of God. And he says, how do you know that? And again, I thought, I don't know. I feel like this is just too good to be true that he's interested. I mean, after all, I've been here for 6 months. I don't believe this is happening. So again, I said, well, we know because we have, and we explained the Book of Mormon quickly, and then he was like, okay, how can I know for myself if where I'm going after this life? And I said, you know what? This Sunday is General Conference. That's when our prophet and 12 apostles, that's when all our most amazing leaders talk. And if you really are interested, Christian, you can come and watch. And it's only 2 hours. You can come and just mainly feel if it's true or not. So he says, okay, I'll be there. And he points at us, and we're like, okay. Do you want us to pass by? He's like, no, I'll go. I know where it is. I've been there. Or I've like seen it on the side of the street. So we're like, okay, we'll see you there at 11 o'clock. So we go at 11 on Sunday. And to be honest, that was about 3 days later. So I had kind of forgotten. We had invited about 6 billion people. So I kind of had forgotten that we invited him. And so we were focusing on the investigators that had come and the members that would sit with them. And we made the point to put the investigators in the front of the chapel. And I'll never forget when we were outside talking with members and preparing for this session, when I look outside the gate of the church, and here comes Christian. And he had usually crazy hair, but he had kind of parted it and kind of came with this wrinkled, beat-up shirt, but he had tried to button it the best he could, and it was apparent that he had tried to look the best. And he had earrings all over his face, but he was looking good. And so we gave him this huge hug and said, oh, Christian, I can't believe you came. He said, of course I'll come. And he had this attitude of like, well, let's see what you got. So we put him right in the middle, right where he can see the best, right where he can hear the best. And I went upstairs and I heard it in English because I wanted to get out what I could of the conference. And my companion, who was Latino, stayed and listened to it in Spanish. And I just remember thinking this was the best conference I've ever heard. The music was perfect. The talks were, I can promise, were straightly directed towards him. I just felt amazing. And I thought, he's going to be baptized. But obviously I was nervous, thinking maybe he's got a pride issue, and I don't know. So I ran downstairs with the other elders. We met up with our companions, and we waited outside the doors for our investigators, and we talked with them. We put appointments, and we talked with members. We put appointments, and Christian still wasn't coming out of the door. And I remember asking my companion, "Did you not sit with him?" And he said, "No, I didn't sit with him. There wasn't room." And I sat with other investigators. I said, "Okay, did you see him?" And he said, "Yeah. As far as I know, he stayed the whole time." I said, "Okay." And so I went and peeked into the chapel, and it was pretty much empty by this time, and he was still sitting there. And he had his head down. And I remember turning to my companion and said, "Oh my goodness, he slept through the whole thing. He was asleep." And my companion was like, "No." I was like, "Yeah, he's asleep in there." And he's like, "I can't believe it. That was so amazing." And I looked back in, and he kind of had stirred. And so I was like, maybe he's not. Maybe he's just sitting there. I don't know. And I didn't really think that maybe he was just sitting there. It looked like he was asleep, which is a common occurrence in Mexico, I think, during the general conference. And so I was sitting outside with my companion. We were standing outside, and he left the chapel doors and came outside. And it was just us three. And he had big red puffy eyes. And it's like how I look when I cry. So I knew instantly something had touched him. And he came right up to me, and he had his head down. And he came up to me, and he put his finger in my chest. And he knew my name. We had talked before, so he knew I was Elder Bodine, and he looks me in the eyes, and with tears coming down even more, he says, "Elder Bodine, what was that I just saw? Who were those men that spoke with such an energy," he says, "a power that I've never felt in my entire life?" He says, "What was that music that I was hearing? I felt as if angels were singing." And he cries even more. He says, "Who are you? Who are you? Who are you?" And he points to my companion, and he says, "Why are you both so amazing? Why are all these people so happy? I've never seen such happy people in my life." I had no words. I was crying. And he says, "How can I know this is true?" Because I think it is. We testified right there to him that it was. We gave him a Book of Mormon and told him to read it. We put an appointment with him, but we couldn't wait. Next day was our P-Day, so we went straight to his house even on our P-Day. And he had read till Alma in the Book of Mormon. And the best part of that was that he testified to us in that lesson that it was true. We didn't even have to say anything. He said, I've read enough that I know this book is true, and I'm willing to do anything to change. He had already taken out some earrings. We told him to take out a couple more, and he took them all out, and he threw them, I remember. And he threw them, and he said, no way am I putting another earring in. We invited him to church the next Sunday, and our church started at 7. He was there probably at 5:30. He was ready to go with the best looking clothes he's ever worn. He had his hair combed, and he didn't miss a church meeting after that. He got baptized within 2 weeks. We invited him to be baptized that first lesson, and he accepted like that. I don't think we needed to ask him. I think he would have asked us. But he, Christian, is without a doubt my hero. Because it's someone that completely changed his life. And I've never loved someone like I love Christian. I remember when I left that area, I hugged him until his eyes bulged out. And he cried, but I remember just thinking, this is a man. Someone that really knows and understands the atonement of Jesus Christ. He's someone that I can just look up to for the rest of my life. And because of him, he has friends that have been baptized, family members that have been baptized. He has a calling. He's my hero.
This isn't a story that I really share too much, but I feel like I'll share it today. Me and my companion, we had this one investigator. Her name was Agnes Yarley. Agnes was a lot different from a lot of our other investigators. She is a refugee from Liberia, and we dropped her a couple of times. We really didn't think that she would progress. But 1 week she showed up at church, much to our surprise, and we went back. We just kept on teaching her. And I remember as me and my companion, Elder Ramirez at the time, he was from Idaho. Agnes's baptismal date was 2 weeks away, and she was struggling a little bit. We weren't sure if she was going to make it. She had a lot of faith issues, and she wasn't sure if really the church was for her or if it was true. And we just kind of kept with it. We were fairly optimistic, but at the same time, we thought that, oh great, this is another date that's going to fall through. She's not going to get baptized. And both of us were thinking it, but neither of us said it at the time. And one thing about Agnes was she didn't speak much when we taught her. So when we taught her, she just kind of stood back and she just nodded her head when we asked her if she understood what we were talking about. And sometimes we would briefly ask her to explain what we had just taught to her, but she'd get it out in her broken English. But she is a really nice lady, and we could tell that she did understand what we were teaching her. We taught the restoration, which was the first lesson, probably like 5 or 6 times to her before it actually sunk in. We taught the gospel of Jesus Christ about 2 or 3 times before it finally sunk in. But one thing that I noticed is we only taught the plan of salvation once. And, she almost got it right away. We went through the rest of the commandments, and, it was pretty smooth. We were just down to those last 2 weeks before baptism, and, those are the hardest 2 weeks. But, we think Agnes is going to drop us. She keeps on dropping appointments, and, we're pretty sure that she's not going to get baptized. So we go down there one day, and everyone was there. Both of her nephews were there that also ended up getting baptized. She was there, but we went and, we just asked Agnes what was up. And then she just started crying and bawling. And this is a lady that really never spoke to us unless we spoke to her and asked her a question. She never really asked us anything. She never really had any stories. But, this one day she had a story. I guess, there was a big civil war in Liberia, and her dad was one of the generals in the Liberian army, and he refused to fight against his people. And some of the people that were involved in the revolt, they basically said, hey, help lead our army against these other people who are still Liberians, otherwise we'll kill you. And so her father, he studied his scriptures every day. He did all that he could to follow God. He said, I'm not gonna lead this people against my people, or, we're fighting each other. And so he didn't. So right in front of Agnes, he got shot in his head. And, Agnes never told us this before, but, her father was killed right in front of her. But anyways, the story goes on. Agnes, she tells us, and these are stories that don't happen to every missionary, and they only happen once in the mission if they do. But she told us that she saw her father. Her father came to her in a dream, and whether it be a real father or just a dream, we don't know. But I feel like this was revelation from God to Agnes, but she saw her father sharing the gospel with people in the spirit world, and he told Agnes, hey, Agnes said, I don't want to come there with you, I don't want to go back home. And he said, Agnes, if you want to come here with me, then you need to join the church of God. You need to join the church. You need to join his church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he is there preaching the gospel with, I guess it was his companion, because Agnes didn't know. But he came to Agnes and he told her that her father told her that she needed to join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which was interesting because, this is a man, he never had the opportunity to receive the gospel, but he studied his scriptures every day. He came to her and told her that. And, one thing, the most interesting part of it was, her father's name, his actual name was Davis Yarley. And that happened to be my last name. And, it kind of felt like it was pretty cool that Agnes said one of the reasons she listened to us in the first place was because she saw my last name and is the same last name as her father's, or the same first name as her father's. And, that was really one of the stories that, I took back with me from my mission. I'm sure the way I told it wasn't as spectacular as it was when it first happened, but, it was a story that hit me in a way that, me and my companion both in a way that was like, wow, this lady, we didn't think that she would progress. And it's funny because I actually left that area. I served there for 4 transfers, which is around a little less than 6 months. But I ended up going back there at the end of my mission to help train a missionary. And, when I looked at Agnes, she is still active. This is around a year later. Her countenance was brighter than ever. It's like she is shining. It is a different experience. But I feel like I got to see light come into her life. And it really showed in her countenance when I went back. That was one of the greatest feelings that I had on my mission.
I think every missionary has their own ways of making missionary work become more novel and exciting, or trying new things out. For me, I like to set goals that would kind of stretch my limits. So for example, one day we tried to hand out, it was 2010, so we figured we're going to hand out 2010 invitations to church. And we did. We spent, I don't know if it was 7 or 8 hours. We both just did like every other door, kind of putting invitations on doors. And it's kind of funny, actually, that usually we'd get 1 or 2 investigators at church. That Sunday we had 0, which is kind of a funny coincidence. So it wasn't very effective, but it was fun, and got a lot of people, to at least know a little bit about the doctrine on the invitation. Anyway, another story I have as far as goal setting goes was I was serving in Comodoro, Rivadavia, which now is its own mission, which is pretty cool. And I was serving as a zone leader, and I thought I wanted to change things up a little bit. So I decided I was going to try to find as many new investigators as possible by going on exchanges every day with a different elder in the zone, and just find. Yeah, so the goal was to get 100 new investigators. Usually in a typical week, we'd get, I don't know, it really depends, but maybe 5 to 15 would be kind of the normal range in that area. It wasn't like super easy to get in houses typically, especially downtown, but you could usually get in a house maybe every block or every other block. Anyway, and so we started. So I'll tell this story. So on Monday, I was going with Elder Osborne. He's kind of new, fresh to the mission, lots of excitement. And we say, okay, if we're going to get this goal, we're going to have a really good start for Monday. So, we eat some food, and then we decide we're going to go out and start tracting at 2 or 3, and usually preparation day ends around 6. Anyway, we go out, we just go to the most kind of high up in the mountains. The people have less money in the mountains typically, and sometimes they're also a little bit, they're not quite as busy. Their schedule is more flexible, and they're able to sit down and talk with you and let you in more often, typically. Anyway, so we went, and I think we got like 14 new investigators that evening. So it was good. We, maybe entered in 7 or so homes, and we just do really, really brief lessons. We'd go in, we'd sing a song, share, the contents of a pamphlet very briefly, give them the pamphlet to read, and then schedule a time for our next visit. We count that as a new investigator, and then leave with a prayer. And so it went well. Tuesday, I was going over, I think, to La Prensa, or to a different area, and at district meeting in the morning, so it was going to be a short day anyway, because we had district meeting in the morning, and then we had like lunch, and then we'd start tracting in the area. I just got really, really sick and really had to use the restroom. And I think it was because the day prior, we had eaten kind of like raw cut potatoes, like they're kind of green, but we also ate them with like these little fishies. And Comodoro has a lot of oil and pollution in the water, from what I understand. And I don't know what got me sick. I think it was either the like polluted little fishies or like raw potatoes, but anyway, it was just making a mess of my stomach all day long, and so I was kind of miserable. But I'm like, if we don't get a good day on Tuesday, there's no way we're going to meet the goal. So we're going to go out anyway. So we go out, and it's cold. I didn't wear a jacket. I was like freezing, had stomach cramps all day long, really had to use the restroom. Anyway, long story short, Tuesday we found like 3 new investigators, maybe some less actives, and went back to the apartment. I just crashed and curled up in a ball in my bed, and I was just done for. I felt so sick, and I just was not sure if we'd be able to meet the goal. But we had a good day on Wednesday and Thursday. On each of those days, we probably got maybe 10, 15 new investigators or something, maybe. And then on Friday, we had a really good day. I think we got 25 new investigators. It was a beautiful sunny day. Me and the elder I was with, we went around, we sang lots of songs to people, kind of used a different tactic, kind of more like conversational with them, and acted really relaxed. And we're like, hey, we're just kind of sharing a message with the people in the community? Can we come in and share some with you? And they let us. And anyway, that was fun. And Saturday was a pretty good day. It wasn't as good of a day as I thought Saturday could have been. Anyway, so Sunday came around, and I went back to work with Elder Osborne in, I think, maybe the same area we had started, or maybe it was my own area this time. And I think we had 10 new investigators that we needed to get 100. So we had gotten 90. And I was thinking, oh, it's going to be so easy. Everyone's home on Sunday. Just getting a few houses. It can be like super, super easy compared to the other days. So after church, we go knocking, and it's just nothing. Well, actually, okay, let me take that back. I think we prayed. We felt inspired to go on a certain street, and I think we got in 3 houses in a row, which is the only time it happened on me on my mission. But that was maybe like 4 new investigators, I think. And then after that, there's just nothing. And then I remember it was getting towards 8 o'clock, and you're supposed to be back at the apartment around 9. I was like, oh man, it's getting dark. We're in like the most dangerous part of town. In Comodoro, it's, has crime. You can hear gunshots sometimes at night. And here we are walking out here. And anyway, so I keep on asking, and they didn't want to set. They're like, what are you doing out here? It's so late. You're going to get killed, or, whatever. I don't know if they said you'd get killed, but anyway, they wouldn't let us in. And so we were knocking. I think we had maybe 96, or we needed like 4 more new investigators. We were in a lesson. There was kind of like a mom, a neighbor there who's an adult. And then like the teenage boy came in, and the father came home, and we're like, this is great. There's 4 right here. We're just going to share something and then set a time to come back. We shared something, a lesson, a song, a pamphlet, and a prayer. And then I think we said a prayer. Anyway, when we were trying to set a return appointment, the father just said no. Like, he would not let us come back. Like, even if we wanted to just come back, we're like, oh, what if we just come back and sing you a song, or come back and give you a pamphlet? We're just trying anything we can do to get a return appointment, and they wouldn't have it. So after trying to set a return appointment for 5-10 minutes, we just gave up. We're like, okay, well, thank you. We're like, well, we can't count them as new investigators because they won't let us visit them again. And I just thought it was so funny. Like, if we just got them to say yes, like, we would have accomplished our goal. And they were actually the only person who we visited who would not allow us to, in any shape or form, set a return appointment. Anyway, so it was maybe like 8:15 or 8 when we got out of there, and had not much success. And then kind of was trying to, like, where do I need to go? Felt impressed, like, go up there to the left in that house. So we went in there. We were able to get in and met the husband and wife, got 2 new investigators. So we were at 98, and we needed 2 more. And I was kind of lacking the faith a little bit, because it was like 8:40 or so, and I'm like, well, let's go this way. It was kind of really dark, no lights. We're knocking on doors, nothing. And then, it's probably 8:45 or 8:47. I'm like, well, if we don't get an appointment right away, we're gonna have to like head back to the apartment. And then, the next house I saw, I'm like, wait, I recognize this house. We've been here before. We've already counted the father as a new investigator, but we haven't counted his wife. Maybe we can teach his wife this time. So we go in, we knock, they're there. It's just really dim. It didn't look like any lights, but they had a little stove on inside, gas stove for light. And anyway, when I went in there, I saw, the husband and wife, and we saw this little girl who looked like she was maybe 5 to 10. I thought she was younger than 8. She was at the table drawing, and we asked if we could share something. They said sure. We sang a song, gave them a pamphlet about, I think, the plan of salvation. And then I asked the question. So I was thinking, oh man, so there's 1 new investigator. We have to go home right after this because it's time to go back. And I'm like, who's that girl? I've never seen her. We've been here several times, but who is she? And she's like, oh, that's our daughter. And I'm like, oh, how old is she? And I can remember them saying, Ocho. And I was just so excited. I was like, oh, I can't believe it. So we set a return appointment to come back. And we left, and I was just like, that has got to be a miracle. So I was asking my companion on the way out, I'm like, "Hey, Elder, what time is it?" And he looked at his watch. He's like, "It is 8:59 p.m." And it was just so funny because we, the week ends at 9 p.m. on Sunday, and we finished the goal at 8:59 p.m. Anyway, after that, we just ran home, and there was dogs chasing us, and we felt good that we had reached our goal. But yeah, it was crazy. It kind of helped strengthen my testimony that if you have a goal that kind of stretches your faith, if you pray about it and you feel that's something the Lord can help you accomplish, and it's for a good purpose, then you can do it with His help. You can do anything that you set your mind to that the Lord approves of.
It's this cockroach that has wedged itself in my ear.
The door to our apartment bust open and in come 10 police officers.
We're going down the street and I hit the brake and I'm like, this car can stop it.
We had been evicted from our apartment, and so we had to pack everything up that night because the next day we had to be out.
He grabs his pipe and comes and smacks my dad in the face. Smacks him in the face.
I was asleep one night and I felt something in my ear, and I was just like freaking out because I was like, I can't hear anything until I could wake up my companion. It was like the only time I'd ever had an American companion. So we both were like, what the heck are we gonna do? Like, what is happening? So we get to the hospital, and these people don't know what they're doing. It's like the night shift crew at the hospital. And let me just tell you, the hospital is like not a hospital, at least by American standards. It's very much like a room, like the emergency room was a literal room that like you go into for emergencies. Like it was just this room with a table, and you're just like, well, I hope they can help me out. So they just like stick this like instrument in my ear and like find out later it's this cockroach that has wedged itself in my ear. We get the cockroach out, they ended up sending me home after taking half of it out because they couldn't get the rest. They're like, we might have to get it surgically removed. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I get there the next morning because they tell me just to come back once it's like, later in the day when the doctor's actually there. The doctor, it's so funny. I just have to say this description of him. I walk in and I'm like, who's the doctor? And it's this guy in jeans and a wolf t-shirt. And I'm just like, he doesn't even have a lab coat on. Like, how do I trust this man? But he goes in and he plucks out the rest of it in one foul swoop. There's the head, the cockroach is gone. He gives me some medicine for my ear, and then we just leave.
I think the craziest experience, and this is a one-time thing. It never happened. It never happened to anybody else before. It never happened afterwards. But one day in the morning time, we were still in our apartment studying, and all of a sudden we hear gunshots outside and people running around. And so there was the ladies who owned the pension, well, her and her daughter, they were outside, and I heard them yelling. So I waited till the gunshot stopped, and I jumped up and ran to go see if they're okay. And I was kind of coming down the hall. I hear people on top of the roof, and I'm thinking, okay, this is getting kind of crazy. And as I come around the corner, the door to our apartment bust open and in come 10 police officers. And I'm like, whoa, okay, don't shoot me. This is okay. I'm not doing anything. Come to find out, someone had robbed a bank in the center of town, had come towards where we were and ditched the car. And because the gates were open at the bottom, they had run up the stairs and run on top of the roof, and the cops were coming after them. So it was kind of all transpiring right there. So I think that was probably the crazy one, was the cops busting into my apartment looking for somebody. But they caught them eventually. But that was definitely a wild experience.
We were driving to this castle, and you had to go up a mountain and down a mountain to go to it there. And so I remember coming back down, and my head thinking, I was like, oh, I just put this car in neutral, and like gas mileage is gonna be great. So we're going down the mountain, and everything's gonna be fine and all that stuff. And then I remember we're going around a turn, and I was pushing on the brake, and I felt something weird with the brake, and I was like, oh no. And we still had to go in turns. And each one of these turns, there was like a 20-foot drop. And I remember we're coming around another turn, and I was like, all right. And we're going down the street, and I hit the brake, and I'm like, this car's not stopping. But I look in front of me, and it was like one of the few turns that didn't have a 20-foot drop. But what was in front of me was a dirt road
a rock, and a tree. And so my logical mind's thinking like, let's go to the road. And like, just I'll take my foot off the gas, whatever else, let it coast down this road. And I remember like, okay, I'm gonna position the car that way. But then I feel the car position itself back towards the rock, and I was like, I'm okay with this. Like, there's no problem at all. And I'm like, I was like, I should not be okay with it. I'm about to hit a rock. But we hit the rock, and we like jump over something, and we land to this grass field, and we just stop. And we all get out of the car, and we like look around, we're like, all right, are you okay? Are you okay? Some Albanians come over, like, are you guys okay? Like, and I remember just like looking over, and like, I went back to look at the rock, and the rock was like the exact width of the tire. So we hit that thing square on, and we jumped over what we didn't see behind the rock was a giant tree stump. And so we landed, and I looked over at my companion. I was like, dude, I tried going for that road, but like someone was pushing the car back, and like my companion was like, yeah, I noticed that, and I was totally fine with it too. I was like, so was I, man. So that's part of the crazy near-death experience. I remember we were all just like, oh man, there's somebody out watching out for us right now.
Probably one that wouldn't happen to any other missionary. I arrived in my area, got matched up with my trainer, and when we got to our house, I pulled my luggage inside of our apartment, and my trainer informed me that we had been evicted from our apartment. And so we had to pack everything up that night, because the next day we had to be out of our apartment. So the way, this is how Brazil is a little bit different than Utah, is the way they move from house to house is with these, basically those Volkswagen vans, and they chop the back off and they put a flatbed on there. So those really old Volkswagen vans, flatbed on the back, and you throw all of your stuff on top of there, and then they throw some ropes around it, and that's how you move your stuff from point A to point B. So we rented one of those, and we loaded all of our stuff up on there, which included, couches, beds, kitchen tables, anything that was in the apartment on top of there. And then we were driving over to another missionary's house where we were going to stay until we could find another apartment. In Brazil, you normally, if you're on the apartment hunt, it's done by the missionaries and not by the office or anything else like that. So we loaded everything up, and I rode on the back, inside of a couch, on the back of the truck, as we drove over to the other place. And my companion was inside with the driver. There wasn't room for me inside. We get there, we unloaded, and we were in a very small room with 4 missionaries. So we were sleeping on the floor on our mattresses. Inside this first week, just some unique experiences that I had. There was a huge rainstorm that came in and flooded the entire apartment. So I woke up in the middle, or in the morning, and all my clothes were wet. Mattress was completely soaking. And then also, in that same time, we had rats in the house and different types of cockroaches that were crawling on us as we were trying to sleep, just because we were sleeping on the ground, and the apartment wasn't very clean or anything like that. But that lasted for 7 weeks, sleeping in those conditions and living in those conditions while trying to learn the language, while trying to take a bus 45 minutes over to our area where we lived, or where we worked, to find a house to live in, as well as teach the investigators that we had.
So my last area, Sermon Lagos, we went to a sketchier part of town. It's called Sindicato. And we were leaving to try to get a taxi to make it to another lesson back in the city, the actual city, Lagos, which is about a 15-minute walk or 20-minute drive. So we were trying to hurry, get a taxi. We were meeting the taxi driver at the bar, or the cafe, I can't remember where it was. There were a bunch of kids, super high. There was about 10 or 15 kids in this bar, just super high. Like, they were teenagers, I don't know what they were in there, but they're like, ranged from 14 to 18, just super high. And they, as we were waiting for the taxi, they came out, and as they left, they just started, saying normal swear words and just bashing on us, the church, Jesus Christ, and I remember, don't do this. I remember kind of just as they walked away, both my companions kind of went more towards like going into the bar to ask the people to call the guy again, the taxi driver. I remember just like kind of watching them as they left, because I was kind of ticked to what they said. I just watched them, and one of them kind of looked back. And because they're high, they don't have any control of what they're thinking or what they're feeling or whatever. So I remember looking back and he started talking to me. Like, they were at least 50 yards away, but he started yelling back at me. And then I just ignored it and went back inside. Anyways, my companion goes out, and he's like, Elder Limbley, get back out here. And I come out, and this whole group of guys are coming back. And they come, one of them grabs a garden. It wasn't a garden hose, it was like a pipe for a sprinkler system. And he grabs this pipe and comes and smacks my companion in the face. Smacks him in the face. This does not happen a lot. Just don't be dumb like me. Smacks him in the face. Some other guy comes to uppercut him in the mouth, but I pulled him away. And then the guys that were in the cafe came and helped us and kind of split it up. So that was a pretty crazy, sketchy thing. So anyway, just, I guess, don't look at him like that, like I did. I was so dumb. Anyway, so that was a crazy experience.